I have heard that the word guru in Sanskrit is based on the root meaning something heavy. Anyway, it implies like a master of something, like you have a guru for dance, for musical instruments, for grammar, and so forth. So in the original, it just meant like a teacher at the level of being a master of their science. In Tibetan, it was translated as lama. La meaning something superior, and ma meaning a mother. So it's like, you know, a super special mummy, right? So like as a mother cares for her child, her only child, I think it has that sense of, you know, wanting that kind of warmth and caring that a mother would give to bringing up her child. So like that, basically. Again, nowadays the word lama has become very adulterated, and anybody practically can be called lama if you say 2 words of Dharma. And even the kitchen monk can be called Lama Sonam or Lama Norbu, meaning he's a monk. Of course, it doesn't mean a monk. There is a word for a monk, a traba. But many people nowadays loosely use the word lama for any old monk. And also, of course, then after Kontrul Rinpoche, maybe Jamgon Kontrul, the idea that after doing 3 years retreat, you'll become a lama, which seems to me pretty absurd. But anyway, that has also become the tradition, especially in the West. It doesn't matter how well or how ill you did your retreat, you know, at the end of it, you get your certificate called New Lama. So nowadays the word doesn't really have too much meaning. But when traditionally it was meant to be a teacher in the sense of somebody who themselves had mastered their skills and then would transfer it to oneself. Well, traditionally, the root guru was that teacher who showed, or whoever, who showed you the nature of the mind, and with whom you therefore would have a very deep heart connection. That one, the one you follow, whose lineage you follow, who you feel most committed to, and who has the responsibility of guiding you on the path. I mean, there's a close connection. That would be your root guru, your Sari Lama. I would say no. I don't think to start with you need it. I mean, if we look on the Lama, a well-endowed Lama, as like a PhD professor, then we don't go to them to learn the cat sat on the mat, right? You have an infant school teacher for that, right? So why waste their time, right? It would be much better if we already had skills and knowledge, and then they can impart their special knowledge for us because we're ready. So there are many, many courses which are on offer, which are not given by anyone claiming to be fully enlightened, but nonetheless who have skills, who have done practice, who are very, very competent to help us on the path to the point at which we are ready to take that leap forward. Ideally so. I mean, that there is that immediate or later sense of commitment on both sides. But of course nowadays, when so many of the lamas have hundreds, if not thousands of students, then that is not always so, at least not on the part of the lama. Because even if the student feels a very close connection with the lama, It doesn't necessarily mean that the Lama feels any particular connection with a student which he only sees in a crowd. You know, I mean, many Lamas, when they give teachings, you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of people present, and how can he possibly know each one of them and their specific needs? Well, I mean, to be honest, although the texts speak about it in this way and it make it sound as though each aspirant has a very close, intimate connection with their teacher, like Naropa with Tilopa and Marpa with Milarepa, even if they had problems, at least they knew each other. But in fact, in Tibet, even among the monks, what to speak of lay people, they didn't really have a very close connection with their Lama. The Tulku, the incarnate Lama who was running your monastery, you would usually only see him sitting up on his throne during rituals. You wouldn't know him intimately. He wouldn't know you intimately. But you had devotion from your side. And that was what was counted as being the important thing. Even if he didn't know you or your name, nonetheless, from your side, you had the devotion. And it was regarded that the Lama, a genuine Lama, would always be open. So whether or not he personally was directed towards yourself, nonetheless, your heart would then meet with his blessing. Even though he didn't know that that's what would be happening at that specific time. Trungpa Rinpoche, Chögyam Trungpa, said it was like a corridor with two doors on either side. The teacher's door is always open. Whether or not the student's door is open or not is dependent then on whether or not the blessings will be received. So it was actually much more like that, unless you happened yourself to be a tulku, or a specially favored Khenpo. You didn't have access to the Lama for personal advice and guidance. You probably had your devotion to the Lama and invoked the blessings from the Lama, but you would get teachings from someone at a much lower rank who was available and would be able to guide you. Well, I think if we have to ask a question, then we haven't found our teacher. I mean, it's like falling in love, right? You meet lots and lots of, you know, as a woman, you meet lots and lots of you know, available people, but, you know, whether or not your heart opens towards them or not is a matter of maybe of karma. And you know, if you fall in love, you fall in love. And you might be meeting with the most delicious looking male with all the qualities of being a good man, and it's not yours, right? There's just very nice, but no. And likewise, one can meet with many, many lamas, and they're absolutely exemplary, but they're not for me, right? And then one might meet someone who seems to be quite ordinary, but somehow there's that inner knowing that this is the person I'm going to follow. It's here. It's here. It's nothing to do with what his qualities are and how many exams he's passed and how many retreats he's done. It's an inner knowing. And normally in that case, it would be reciprocal. He would also recognize that you are meant to be his student, I would think, if it was genuine and a real karmic meeting again. But of course, we have to remember that even if we studied with a great teacher in the past, maybe that teacher is not here now, right? I mean, they might not have been reborn. They might be a baby. They might be in Tibet or somewhere else. I mean, it's not absolutely sure that you're going to meet with them again, in which case you have to make a new relationship with someone else. Well, you don't have to jump right in the deep end of the swimming pool. I mean, you then check up, right? I mean, even in the tantric texts, it recommends up to 12 years of investigation. Of course, nobody does 12 years, but I mean, the idea is you don't jump into this. This is a very important commitment on both sides. My Lama, Khamtrul Rinpoche, when I asked him about a certain Lama who was very controversial, but whom he knew well, what he thought of that Lama. And he thought, and then he said, well, at that level, it's very difficult to tell. You have to wait 20 years and then look at his students. And the idea being that, you know, especially with a prominent Lama, how have his students evolved? Right? Would you want to be like that? So we can start by being very cautious. I mean, just because you receive empowerments, wongs, from a Lama doesn't make him your root guru. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says he has 25 Lamas on his refuge tree. All the Lamas he ever got any teachings from, even ones he knows were not really actually like his regents, were quite corrupt and tried to kill each other. Nonetheless, he says, I have them on my refuge tree because to me, personally, they were very kind. And I know what they did, but anyway, nonetheless, I'm grateful to them. So the idea then, of course, he has two main teachers who he feels are his real root gurus, but he allows all the others and shows his respect and appreciation for everybody. So you don't have to get narrowed down. This is the only guru, and I mustn't look at any other gurus. That would be unfaithful. The Tibetans themselves had many, many teachers and appreciated many, many teachers. But eventually there was one who rose from that, who was especially meaningful for them, and usually whose lineage they would follow. Well, again, it's about opening the heart and surrendering. I mean, if we carry our ego with us, then that blocks the ability for the blessings to enter because we're all full of me. And so the idea is that we empty ourselves so that the blessings can fill us like a vessel, right? You pour out the dirty water and then the nectar can come in. So ideally, this is the idea of Guru devotion, that we completely open up, completely surrender, and likewise do not criticize, do not question, just allow the blessings to come to us. And in the incidence of a good Lama, who is not only fully qualified, but immaculate in body, speech, and mind, then this is an especially quick way. It is said that through meditation, we may or may not get there, but through open-hearted devotion, it's for sure. So there's a lot of emphasis on this ability to surrender. And provided that the guru genuinely is immaculate and impeccable and totally trustworthy, this is considered really the special quick way, the fast track. But of course, as we are seeing in now, but although I think this problem was always there underground and not spoken about, not all lamas are as impeccable as we would expect them to be. It's very confusing why they're not, considering their training through lifetimes and the fact they're holding lineages. But nonetheless, there's very sad examples of bad conduct, really awful conduct. And so one has to be cautious. one should not be too naive. Personally, I feel if you feel a red light going off inside, you listen to that red light. Because if something's saying this doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't. It's a very, very sad comment, because the theoretical instructions are beautiful and heart-lifting. And it's very, very sad that nowadays you have to say to people, be careful, be cautious, and don't trust too soon. Every Lama would argue against that and say the whole point is to throw out your common sense. But in fact, unfortunately, it's been shown that when we do that, we can end up feeling totally crushed, confused, humiliated, and even losing faith in the Dharma. So in those cases where students and especially women have come across this very, very sad comment on the misuse of devotion, I say go for refuge to the Dharma, because the Dharma is completely pure and impeccable and will never corrupt you. But of course, if you are with a Lama who is genuine and is impeccable, and there has never been any whiff of any kind of scandal, then that is very fortunate, and you can relax and just open your heart totally, because they won't ask you to do anything which you would feel is inappropriate. It's very, very sad. I mean, as I say, it is quite inconceivable how such things could happen. I think that it's important to remember that this is just a small percentage. It is the majority of lamas and teachers and monks are perfectly reliable and trustworthy and excellent in body, speech, and mind. But there are the few, not necessarily those you would expect, who have contravened the understanding of being trustworthy. And as I say, in that case, I think you have to accept that that's what happened. Who knows why? It's very, very sad and quite bewildering. But don't give up the Dharma. Because of the conduct of one person or two doesn't mean that the whole Dharma is corrupt. The Dharma is not corrupt. And the Dharma is very perfect, very pure, and we can definitely rely on that. And keep practicing. And don't think that because somebody has contravened the samaya, the pledge between students and teacher, that invalidates the whole path, because it does not. And so we must have confidence to keep going and believe in our own innate Buddha nature, which has never been in any way polluted. And just keep going and say how sad, generate compassion also for this situation, and the way, not only for the situation, but the way that it is being handled by those who really should know better. Different lamas are different and expect different things. But I think, to my mind, a good lama is those who are teaching their students not only to practice the Dharma, but to grow in the Dharma so that they become adults. And when they expect their students to stay at the point of being just dependent on the Lama for everything, and no ability to make any mature decisions because they're always running to Lama for his advice and his modes and so forth. I think that is, to my mind, a very psychologically dangerous situation. And one should look for that in the Lama. How are his students responding as they they mature. In the beginning, we need to listen to the Lama and take their advice, because we have a Lama because we assume they know a whole lot more than we do. And they can see ahead on the path where we can't see because we've never been there. I mean, the whole point of a spiritual teacher is our trust that they have arrived where we are seeking to go. That they know the path very well, not because they read about it and heard about it, because they themselves have actually walked that way and they know it very well. It's it's part of who they are. And then they can transmit to us where to go, where to detour, don't go that way, go this way, and so forth, because they themselves have seen it. And so in the beginning, we need to trust and follow their directions, because that's why we have a teacher, is because they know more than we do. But at a certain point, we have to become independent. I mean, even Marpa sent Milarepa away, and he had to practice on his own and make his own mistakes and learn from them. And so that, I would say, was a very important aspect of the teacher-student, that they don't rely on, because a teacher can rely on their students as much as the students rely on the teacher. It becomes a symbiotic relationship, which I think is quite unhealthy. And you see with the great masters like Dego Khyentse Rinpoche and others, that even when they had many students, and Kamta Rinpoche also had many, many tukus that they were bringing up. But at a certain point, like birds flying from the nest, the fledglings, they get their wings and they fly off. You know, they still have that heart relationship with the guru, but nonetheless, they're not depending on the guru anymore, because they themselves have now cultivated the qualities needed for themselves to be able to live an authentic Dharma life. Absolutely. I mean, the point is that when these lamas, certain lamas talk about samaya, it all seems very one-sided. But in fact, it's not just a samaya of the student to the guru, but definitely a samaya of the guru to the student, that the guru's samaya, their pledge, is to help the student, to bring the student on to a realization of the fullness of their Buddha nature, and to guide them on the path, and to be like a mother. You know, I mean, the problem is that in the Vajrayana system, we are taught to look on the guru like a father. And in fact, often in the prayers, he is called Pa, which is like daddy, right? It's not even the formal yab, but Pa, and so we are taught to trust him like a small child would trust a father. The father is the one secure thing that you can believe in this very bewildering world. You run to your daddy. And so then, when the father misuses their position to abuse the child, and especially sexually, not only physically, then this is total confusion for the child, and everything they believe in is just ripped apart. And the child basically never really gets over it. They carry it forever as a deep wound inside. And so this on the spiritual path is what these lamas are doing. And that's why it's inconceivable that they could do that to any living being, what to speak of their own students. Where is the compassion? Where is the wisdom? Where is the caring? Where is there anything to be said in favor of destroying a person's devotion and faith and ending up with them losing also their own belief in themselves, in their own qualities, in their own innate perfection? Everything is destroyed. Not just this lifetime, but for future lifetimes, if they are not able to deal with it skillfully. And so this is a very, very serious thing. And this is, again, why we should be very, very careful before making our commitment. because this is not just for this lifetime, but for all our lifetimes until enlightenment is reached. We have to be careful. Of course, of course. And I mean, in the end, even you have the most magnificent teacher and you have a real heartfelt connection with them, they still cannot walk the path for you. I mean, as the Buddha said, Buddha's only pointing the way. You yourself must walk the path. And so, in fact, sometimes people end up becoming kind of Dharma groupies, just hanging out with the Lama. Oh, he looked at me. Oh, he smiled. Oh, isn't he lovely? Look at those dimples. And they completely missed the point. And this is very common nowadays, especially in the West and in China. And it's not about the charisma of the Lama. It's not about, you know, how cute he is or is not. It's about the ability to transmit the Dharma to us in a way that we can move forward and actualize his teachings. That's the point. And so even if we don't have a very deep, heartfelt connection with anyone, you can't force it, but you can still practice. And that's much more important than having a cozy heart-to-heart relationship and no practice. Just getting, you know, like they're a pop star or a football player or something. You know, the Tibetans have these lovely prayers which they sing called Calling on the Guru from Afar. And they're very heartfelt and beautiful. And it's understood that you're not always going to be sitting in front of the Guru. And in actual fact, just sitting in front of the Guru doesn't mean that you're in a relationship with the Guru. You can be 1,000 miles away, and if your heart is open, then the Guru is right there. I mean, the Guru should be in our heart, right? It's not a person. And one time, for example, I met with Kamta Rinpoche, my Lama Kamta Rinpoche, and I said to him, oh, Rinpoche, you know, we haven't seen each other for so long. It had been 2 or 3 years because he was going to Bhutan. And he said, haven't you realized even yet that we are never separate, even for one moment? And I was very surprised he said that, because he wasn't the kind of person to talk like that. But of course it's true. If your Guru is in your heart, you're never apart. Whereas you can be sitting right in front of him and be inwardly, psychically, 1,000 miles away. So we should give up this. I mean, in the Tibetan tradition, usually when you see your Lama visualizing for Guru Yoga, it is in an idealized form, like in the Kagyapa Vajradhara and in the Nyingmapa Guru Rinpoche or Samantabhadra, and so forth, because we should not think that the Lama is the embodiment, right? Their looks and their appearance is only in order to live as a Nirmanakaya in this realm. But that's not the Lama. That's not who you're going for refuge to. Who we are going for refuge to is the nature of the mind, the non-dual pure consciousness, which the Lama has realized and familiarized with, and that which is what we are seeking. So that's the point. Our devotion should be in order to invoke the blessing, in order to realize the true nature of the mind. Because we need blessings. The traditional example is that when the sun is shining, we're talking about India, very intense sun, and we put a piece of paper on the ground under the sun. And the most that will happen, even though the sun is so intense, is that the paper will get dry and crinkle. But if we put a magnifying glass between the sun's rays and the paper, then within a very short time it will start to smoke and then burst into flames. So this is like the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is vast and intense, like the sun. But still, in order to set our hearts aflame, we need it to be personalized through the aspect of the Guru. And that is what the Guru is for. He's to bring down all the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and then transfer them to the students. Well, the idea is that the Guru is like the sun and he's always shining, and whether or not we close the doors and windows is up to us, right? If we open all the doors and pull open the curtains, the sun will come in, the light will come in. If we close it all because we don't have devotion, then we can't complain about being in the dark.